All right, hello everybody. I want to do I thought I'd do a quick video, um, just going over the discussion this week because I think it's a very applicable thing. I happen to be in my closet right now, which is the safest place in my house to get work done. I've got a dryer going next to me, so if that's bothering you, maybe you can't hear it. I don't know, but just being real. So, just going to go over the discussion board. Hope you guys are enjoying at least some interaction. If you haven't been able to tell yet by now, the discussions of this course are not nearly as major part of the curriculum as in some past courses. You only have a total of 4, and some of them are more reflection, that you're reflecting and interacting with classmates at least a little bit on what you guys are doing. I think this week, when you're talking about your lesson aims and the just the things that you're going through with preparing for the lesson. You guys are doing great in terms of helping each other out, sharing what's difficult, what's not, sharing ideas, that sort of thing. So I just want to interact with a little bit of what I saw you guys saying, and personally, I think some of these things, me talking a little bit, can help. I haven't responded tons beyond what you've seen me post in past weeks because I felt mostly what you needed was, to just respond a little bit to each other, and the priorities in those weeks was interacting, and the feedback I was getting with you guys on email and phone calls and stuff um, on the assignments. So, but for this week, you guys have had some great comments, and it's been fun for me to to read what you guys are talking about. Someone mentioned not feeling necessarily like you would with a younger crowd. So the tension is you don't instantly have that respect that, like, if you're, you know, a 19-year-old speaking to middle school kids, you oftentimes, have at least a little bit of respect because you're someone older. They look to you, and someone mentioned how they're going to push me, and that's good because they don't necessarily think that you're some major big Bible scholar that knows tons to give them. But guess what? As soon as you get into more adult life, um, if I had to cap myself off at only receiving and respecting people that preach or teach in my church circles just because they're more trained or older than me, I'd be in big trouble. So it's a great dynamic to learn both how to receive from people that maybe aren't even as educated as you. You'll start to experience that as you guys make your way through Moody, but also just getting the experience of teaching people that are more qualified or just as qualified to teach the lesson as you. The We have this mentality in America, especially those of us that are around biblically educated people, is that the biblically educated do all the teaching. And if you're not someone that we respect because of your education or your track record, that we don't typically learn much from you. Now, I know that's kind of pigeonholing things a little bit, but I just want to encourage you guys not to have those insecurities, to take hold of the opportunity you have, and to use it as an opportunity to share with people that, hey, this is kind of fun, that we can learn from each other, bounce ideas off each other. But you're the one that just put a lot of effort and work in this week. I think one thing that some of you guys are realizing is that producing a well thought out and a very detail oriented lesson plan is much more intense than what you've probably typically done, even if you've been studying a particular passage and then having a small group discussion, or you went through a Bible study together where you're kind of leading the Bible study, but you're not necessarily planning the studies, whether you're going through like a workbook or something like that. Doing something where you are essentially putting the same amount of time into preparing the lesson as a preacher would a sermon. It's essentially what you're doing. Now, I know this isn't like a sermon preaching class, but it is a lesson preparing class that you do have to look at the text in very similar ways. I think it's a great opportunity for you to appreciate both what goes into those who do teaching consistently in ministry and church settings, but also for you to kind of get your feet wet and appreciate what is going to go into doing something really well and presenting something that's yours. The other thing is that, like I just said, is regardless of how much um, or how unqualified you feel to teach uh, this week, you have put more time into Jonah in this book than anyone else has this week. And so use that to your advantage in the sense that you're going to be the one that has it pumping through your veins, and let that energy and excitement, enthusiasm of what the Lord's been doing in your life and in your heart and mind through your studies, let that come out. In whatever way you can. So just want to encourage you with that. What else did you guys say? Some of you mentioned issues with making a solid transitions from one point and one portion of the lesson to the next. I thought that was great and a very, realistic struggle. Some of these things that seem easy when you see people and good speakers or preachers or teachers transition from one thing to the next, you start to realize that's not as easy and to just do as you maybe thought. And maybe you're going to start appreciating some of the things that you see when people are teaching, and what goes into some of the most simplistic things. So I thought that was good. Keep working on those, and they'll get easier. I promise. So, what else? Someone said it was harder than you thought to transfer from the paper to how. What was that? I took some notes, so I'm trying to read them. That I thought it transferred from the paper to how I needed to say something and what specifically I needed to say. Yeah, I mean, some of you guys were saying how uh, when you're actually preparing what you need to say, some of you are easier to just write something out, and here it is. I can really process myself through writing, and then but communicating, these things to a group is freaks you out. The flip side, there's some of you that's like, hey, just give me anything and I can communicate that. But actually sitting down and writing out something from scratch to communicate can be quite a chore. So you'll realize that things go into both sides. And here's the thing: when you teach a lesson, and when you get into things that ultimately end with a form of communication, um, don't feel like you've got to be the best communicator and engaging speaker on the face of the planet. I can promise you that the most important thing is that you are honoring to God in the time you've put into it and into the relationships that you are building through it. So if you are someone that is wholeheartedly going after this, um, but hey, the communication piece is just something that isn't as natural to you, the people are going to ultimately respond to how the quality of your time and your relationship with the Lord and your relationship with them. That is going to always trump your ability to just have a quick tongue and how to communicate. But those of you that do naturally communicate well, use that strength, but don't fall back on it and not do the work that you need to do a solid lesson. Both on the physical part of preparing the details of the lesson, and then also just spiritually, make sure that you're putting the time in spiritually to make sure that your heart and mind are prepared. So, yeah, again, some of you are commenting how difficult it is to go off of a very detailed lesson plan that wasn't your preference of how to do it. I just want to reiterate again, this course provides a pretty specific way of doing things. It doesn't have to be the way that you do it for the rest of your life. So, if you kind of hated the way that we had you do things here, learn the skills, focus on what you're picking up skill-wise, and then start to implement that into your preferences and the way you do things. I can promise you that I have never produced a sermon or a lesson that I give going through these things that we had you do in verbatim. So these are to help you build the skills and the fundamentals so that things become more natural and you develop, your study and your studying and teaching process that you go through. So other thing you guys commented on was the audience. How a couple of you said, I don't even know what my audience is going to be, and how am I going to develop a hook to hook my audience in? And to you, I just want to acknowledge that, yeah, it's a lot easier when you know your audience, how to visualize and come up with um, the applications and the stories and the things that you're going to get into when you can visualize who you're going to be talking to. But at the same time, it's an amazing skill for you to learn how to prepare when you don't necessarily know who you're going to speak to. So use that I can just promise you it's going to be more uncomfortable when you don't know your audience. At the same time, when you know your audience too well, you don't really pick up on the same. One of the beauties of preparing and not knowing the audience is that it's a much more spirit-led process where you're just, Lord, I'm just trusting that this is going to draw this audience in the best I can, and you're not necessarily just going on your physical senses of what you specifically know about your audience. You're actually having to depend on the Holy Spirit to guide you, which is much more important skill to develop, I can assure you. So, what else? Creativity. Some of you guys commented of like, oh, I just don't feel creative, and just coming up with the applications or the how to hook the audience in and that sort of thing feels like pressure all of a sudden. It's really easy to critique someone's lame illustration, isn't it? Until you're like, now I've got to come up with an illustration. And it's not just what is the best story I can think of this week. It's what's the best story I can think of this week that directly applies to my lesson and is going to help bring my specific audience in. Some of you even mentioned like the kids. I think some of you had middle school kids or younger kids or energetic crowd that you're going to talk to that gets easily distracted. One of the things with a highly social, if you're talking to youth that know each other decently well, you may hook them in with something that they all relate to. Like you bring up like Facebook or a band they all love or a TV show that they all watch. But you know what sometimes happens? Just because you've related well to them, all of a sudden you've distracted them, right? Because you have caused them to just, they're like, oh, as soon as you say that, everyone's looking at each other and they want to talk for 15 minutes and they settle them down and, with a crowd that you may not have a really good handle on you may not be an authority figure in their lives, and therefore you're trying to just struggle to get their attention and have them kind of honor your time a little bit. One of the things you may want to do is try doing something somewhat serious or sobering, meaning you talk about a really difficult situation that someone, maybe it's a story, maybe it's some personal experience you went through, a family member struggling with cancer or a disease. I know that can be, I mean, that's a little dark, but um, it's something that they can like all of a sudden, no one's going to be like popping jokes when you're talking about something that was really hard for you and you're sharing from your heart on that. And when you're trying to build rapport with an audience that is a little rambunctious, getting to be somewhat serious and then maybe bringing in some jokes or other illustrations after the fact um, is helpful, I found. So that's just a little tidbit. That's not going to apply to all of you, and don't feel like, oh, now I've got to change my illustration or my hook. That's just to help some of you out there maybe struggling for some ideas there. What else? I'm going on quite a bit now. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to study or to say. So you guys are doing great. Please continue to use this discussion board to help each other out. Email me directly if you want a specific question answered about this or something else related to the class. And continue to have fun. And I look forward to hearing how your lessons go when you give them. All right, bye.